Welcome, Frank Tipler, Dr. Frank Tipler, to the Institute for Advanced Astonishment. Thank you for coming, Dr.
My
Tipler.
pleasure.
And I just want to say I read an interview, I think it was Omni magazine, uh, in 1994. It might have been the interview. And I used to carry it around with me. I printed it out and I carried it, and it was you eating in a restaurant, a very high quality gourmet restaurant, I think in New Orleans, called Christians, something like that. Does that sound familiar? And you were
Well, I
eating,
did appear in an interview with my wife on Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman, and that was in
ah,
Sanders Palace.
this was Christian's restaurant in New Orleans.
I
I
have
don't know if that
certainly
rings a
eaten
bell.
there, and I do not remember being recorded there, but who knows?
It was
Um,
a it was a print interview, I think, in Omni, and you sustained me for you gave me a good 20 years. What you said, you were eating all this saucy food, very rich, and whoever the interviewer was said, Frank, I think you were 47 at the time, and he said, Frank, take it easy. You had a big dessert. And he said, Frank, aren't you worried about your health? And you said, we're immortal, my friend, like you in so many words. And you had this hearty laugh. And that right there was better than any book, anything that sustained me for so many years that you were you were putting your book to you were living it, saying it's okay, it's all right, and it got me through to about 2009.
well, I'm a failure. I couldn't get you through to today.
No, you got me through to but in 2009 I had this it was the skepticism turned inside out, and I saw the truth of everything, and through meditation. I don't know if you do that. I know you're the
No, I don't do
physicist.
meditation.
No.
I just contemplate the laws of physics and draw the
Yes.
consequences therefrom.
Yes. And at the time I needed to hear it from the laws of physics, and you delivered it with the physics of immortality, and then later with the physics of Christianity.
Well, both Christianity and immortality, which is what I was overeating. I'm afraid I still haven't given up the overeating part. Was both true. Both of them follow from the laws of physics. That one day we'll be resurrected in the far future, never to die again. And also, God exists and is a Trinity. So, what more can you ask, right? That's out of
That's
physics.
it. And you, I think, like me, were a skeptic. I think we were both raised in Christian households, and
Yes,
but
I was
later
raised
you
in
were a
the Deep
skeptic.
South in a Southern Baptist household. My father was sort of not really convinced of the literalness of the Bible and so forth. He was a moderate Christian, and my mother was not really intellectual at all. She was only concerned with the social aspects of Christianity, and she did not want to go against received opinion, which was more fundamentalist in rural Alabama where I grew up. So that's how I grew up. Then I became a skeptic myself about the age of 16, and I remained such until I was um, a postdoc at UC Berkeley. And I was inspired by a article, Life Without End by Freeman Dyson, the great
Yes.
physicist Freeman Dyson, and he was arguing against the heat death. It used to
Yeah.
be thought that the law of thermodynamics would wipe out all life. It's pictured in H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. He goes into the future, basically sufficiently far into the future, past the Eloi and the Morlocks, and everything is dead. All human life, both the Morlocks and the Eloi are all dead, and the sun is dying out. He also had the basic idea of the heat death in his War of the Worlds. That's why the Martians invaded us, because their planet was dying and they wanted new real estate.
Ah,
So it was a pretty depressing picture of the far future. But Dyson said, why on earth need that be true? Why can't we live forever? and he was in picturing a universe that expanded forever. And I said, well, why don't we see if we can also have this in a closed universe?
Yes.
I realized that life would be possible without limit to the very end of time in a closed universe, only if life engulfed the entire universe and gained total control of it and guided it into a special state with no event horizons. And I realized that meant it had to be a single point. The final singularity had to be a single point in the Penrose sea boundary construction. We're talking mathematics here.
Yes. Yes.
And so I call it the omega point theory. That's where the term comes from. And the Encyclopedia Britannica says my most original idea is the idea of the final anthropic principle, which is life necessarily will come into existence in a classical universe and survive to the very end of time. This is a hypothesis. That's what all I could do when I was writing Physics of Immortality, which was published in '94. But I've since improved it. I can now,
Yes.
given the laws of physics, I can now prove that the universe has to end at an omega point, and we do way into the omega point.
It's the best news ever, and it was the best news when I first read it. The Anthropic, you wrote a book, I think, pre-Physics of Immortality on the Anthropic principle, right?
Yes, the anthropic cosmological principle, which I wrote with John Barrow, who
Yes.
unfortunately is now dead temporarily, and he became a fellow of the Royal Society and a professor of astronomy at Cambridge University. So he had a big success afterwards. Um, and I am pleased that he was able to do so. I wish he was still here and I could argue with him on this.
Well, my dad was a skeptic, a little bit like your dad, not so sure. And his name was Frank, like you. And my mom was more of a mystical. She read, and you quote him, Paul Tillich. I remember the Paul Tillich books in the house, and I like that you say you quoted Paul Tillich saying that God is not a being, but God is being itself, which you'd call the singularity, cosmic singularity.
Well, remember, the singularity is outside of space and time. So, for that reason, I say the singularity is supernatural because anything in space and time is natural.
Yes.
So, supernatural literally means above or beyond nature. So, I'm identifying anything in space and time as part of nature, and you're outside of nature if you're not in space and time. And Fred Hoyle hated the idea of a singularity. And the reason he hated it is that if the singularity exists, it would mean that something exists that is not only not subject to the known laws of physics, but is outside of physics altogether. It can't be subject to any possible laws of physics. That's a description of God, isn't it? The only question is, does the singularity exist? Now, also, the singularity from the point of view of physics basically says that if you go back, let's take the backwards in time. I mentioned the going forward in time. If you go backwards in time, what you see is you keep going until laws of physics can't say you can't go any further. Now, the universe, state of the universe, or more generally the multiverse, remember there are parallel universes out there, that's required by quantum mechanics. If the parallel universes don't exist, i.e., if there aren't an infinite number of versions of you and me out there and other classical universes having this identical conversation, then quantum mechanics is
Yes.
actually objectively false. But
Can
I
I
assume
ask,
it's true.
is that the multi-worlds the same
Yes,
thing?
the
Yes, I
multiverse in
agree.
quantum mechanics. Yes,
Yeah.
and it was realized that quantum mechanics is necessarily a multiverse theory. First, by of all people, Erwin Schrödinger. He knew that was the
Yes.
solution to his cat paradox. In one universe, the cat lives. Another universe, the cat's dead. It's that simple. The quantum mechanics is telling you that. And it's time to believe the equations, right? Or else
Yes.
show why the equations are wrong and see if there are experimental consequences. The experiments are right. And I cooked up an experiment whereby you can cooperate with these other versions of yourself out there. And this allows you, this cooperation, to deduce the rate of growth of a pattern in what's called the double slit experiment. Standard theory of standard quantum mechanics,
Yes.
non-many worlds, does not allow you to compute that, but it's an observed fact. The pattern builds up. You can see it build up whenever you conduct the experiment. And I compared it to the observations, and the formula worked out. So this is a direct experimental test of many worlds. You didn't need to do that because quantum mechanics just implied it. But in any case, there are versions of you and me having this conversation. So it's the multiverse that you're looking at going backwards into time. So these various universes are going backwards into time. You say, let's go as far as we can, as far as the laws of physics allow us to go. Now, the state of the multiverse today was determined by the state of the multiverse earlier in time, which in turn was determined by the state of the multiverse still earlier, and so forth. This gives you an infinite sequence. Now, the infinite sequence of times actually defines a completion which is outside the sequence. And that is the beginning of time. That is the uncaused first cause, which Aquinas said all people call God. So here's a quick proof that God exists. Now, you do it in the same game in the future, you end in the omega point. So there are two singularities at the beginning and at the end of time. And you can look in the multiverse itself and see there necessarily has to be a third singularity which connects these two. So there's really only one singularity, which nevertheless, from the temporal point of view, is three. So there's your trinity right there, falling
Yes.
directly out of the mathematics. Now, outside the universe and the singularity, which creates the universe, remember the uncaused first cause, also the uncaused final cause, there is nothing. And further,
Yes.
the singularity controls everything that happens inside the universe. So the singularity is a supernatural being um, which controls everything inside the universe, and outside the universe, there's nothing, no space, time, or matter. So we can say that the singularity, the uncaused first cause, created the universe out of nothing and controls everything that happens inside the universe. What is a more short, perfect description of God than that? So it's
That's it.
automatic in the mathematics.
I agree. And as a mystic, I would say, and a former James Randi skeptic, I think you said you had breakfast with Randy,
Yes,
who
I
was
had it years
a
ago.
fierce skeptic.
Oh yes, he could not follow my arguments.
Oh no.
So that's the problem. What do you do if you can't follow mathematics? That's why I try to refer people to this paper I recently put in American Thinker over the last month, because people always raise the problem of evil. Why do good men die?
Yes.
Most recent, why was Charlie Kirk assassinated? A good man, as far as I've been
Yes.
able to tell. Why would God permit such a thing? Why would God call him home early? Well, the answer was given by Plato 2,300 years ago. That is basically the title of the paper. Problem of Evil solved by Plato 2,300 years ago.
Super
Also,
exciting.
the problem of why we have free will was solved. And it's basically the multiverse gives us the picture. Plato said that if God is all good, then necessarily he will create all possibilities. He will actualize all possible universes. And this is what is suggested, doesn't prove, but suggested by the multiverse of quantum mechanics. So if you actually have free will, a philosopher at Princeton University, a guy named Lewis, said, you can say you can really have the power to do something only if you do it. That who can? How do we know we went to the moon? Well, we did it. Well, people
Right.
dispute that, but I think it's possible to get on a plane and go to Europe. And
Yes.
reason I think so, because I've done it. If you do it, then that's convincing evidence that you can do it. On the other hand, if you don't do it, do you really have evidence that you could have done it? Like, that's why people have disputed that we went to the moon. They claim we haven't done it, so we don't have the technology. But if people start going to the moon on a regular basis, which is one of the things that the U.S. government is trying to do, next year they've scheduled a circumnavigation of the moon again for the first time in 50 years. And a few years after that, they're planning to land on the moon. Now, if
Oh,
you keep
good.
going to the moon routinely, this is pretty clear evidence that you can do it.
Yes.
So the basic idea is, let's apply this to free will. That the only convincing argument that, well, for example, you and I could have had this conversation, or I could have forgotten all about it, or declined your invite.
Yes.
I think I had the free will power to do that, and I also think you had the free will power not to invite me or not.
Right.
You have the free will power. So how do we know that you could have not invited me? How do we know that I could have declined? The answer is, according to Lewis, that there's another universe out there which is every bit as real as this one, in which a perfect analog of me does decline to come out. I've got these calculations to do. I like to talk to you, but I've got these calculations
Sorry.
that need to be done. I'm not getting any younger, and I've got to complete them now, so I can't come on. Thanks for inviting me anyway. That's what I could have said, but here I am.
True.
In another world, I did those calculations. I should have done them in this one too, but there it is. In any case, that's Lewis's explanation. There has to be another world out there in which I had to decline the invitation to be on here. So, what you can say from quantum mechanics is there probably are these other worlds. Certainly, there are other worlds in which I do different things. Now, it might be in every single one of these, I did accept your invitation. Certainly, in one of them, I did. Here I am. But I don't know about those other worlds. And I can't get easily hold of them because they're classical worlds. And one of the aspects of what you can prove is that classical worlds are those worlds which don't interact with each other. So there's no way to have a conversation directly. We can a little bit because we're not perfectly classical. It's only classical at the highest level of the universe itself. Their universe is perfectly classical. The whole shebang, not individuals like you and me. We're mainly classical, a little bit of quantum mechanics, so we do interact slightly with these other versions of ourselves. But in any case, that's the solution to the free will problem. Um, Now, the same thing applies with regard to the problem of evil. As I said, Plato argued that God would not be all good unless he actualized all possible worlds. Now, the reason he gave for this, God would be envious if he of things if he decided not to make it. Now, I didn't buy that, but the Platonist Pierre Abelard, medieval Christian theologian, put a Christian spin to this, Plato's argument. Namely, he said that existence is a good in itself. So, God, being wont to maximize good, will actualize all possible worlds because by so doing, he gives people existence who otherwise would not have it. Now, in one of the worlds, um, uh, Charlie Kirk makes it to old age. He
Yeah.
doesn't go to Jesus until he's in his 80s, say, or maybe even longer. In this world, unfortunately, he left us at the age of 31. But in one world, he's not shot. In this one, unfortunately, the one we find ourselves in, he is shot because that shooter had free will too, not to shoot him or to shoot him. In this world, he exercised his evil nature and decided to murder poor Charlie. Another world, he decided to let Charlie live. So the point is that even if you have a few minutes of existence, That's still better than not existing at all. This was Abelard's solution. So God is necessarily going to have to actualize all possible worlds. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that because it seems to me that God would just actualize the worlds in which there is more good than evil. But this is a second order objection. But
Yeah.
there are plenty of worlds out there. We don't know the full extent of how many worlds there actually are. And we have to remember that I mentioned Charlie went to Jesus earlier or later. The crucial thing is that you are resurrected in the far future, never to die again. So, even in the worlds in which you do die young, you
It's
still have a
okay.
second chance. And that's the crucial thing. That is true in all possible worlds, all possible classical worlds. I can prove that the power to resurrect will necessarily be there. It's just physics.
I love every word you just said. And if you'll permit me for just a minute, I don't know where you stand on a mystical interpretation of what you're saying, but from my skeptical old self, I would agree with you. And then from my mystical new self, where the monkey mind kind of got quiet for a little while, when that monkey mind that's going gets quiet, you sense what you're saying is true. That's what happens in the deepest meditation. So I think a person like Frank Tipler is and why so many skeptics can go against you is they're not as spacious as you. You're a spacious physicist. And I think you always talk about this expansive view, and it's so big, and that's like the ocean, that's the truth. And so you're able to, unlike me, you know the math and the physics, and you're one of those rare ones that can take it and actually prove it with the physics and the math, where I can just say it subjectively that I experienced something like the omega point in inward by letting go of the self. Sort of everything you wrote about just resonates with me when I go into deep meditation. It's all true. And that's why I loved you before as a skeptic, and now even as a mystic, you're even greater. It's even greater, and you're so courageous to keep coming, even though the people might, the skeptics like Randy might not understand. You just keep forging ahead. So I don't know if any of that made sense.
Oh, it does. Let me make a regard to mysticism. Um, Given the existence of God and quantum mechanical determinism, I have to emphasize that because we do have free will, um,
Yes.
is that the statement of mysticism, what it is in the Christian tradition, is opening your mind to God so you can feel God
Yes.
directly. That is in essence
Yes.
the mysticism. And the Eastern Church emphasizes mysticism far more than the Western Church. And the
Yes.
Western Church emphasizes the rationality of God and theology and de emphasizes the mysticism. The Eastern Church neglects the rationality. Now, true Christianity would combine the two because
Yes. Yes.
God, who controls everything inside the universe, it would be astounding that he does not talk to you directly. He
Uh,
can. Now, the way it does, it's very subtle. Remember, everything is determined. Equivalently, God has providence. Nothing happens in reality that God does not will. So what he can do, he guides the whole of the universe. He does it through the laws of physics he set up in the beginning, but also the initial conditions in the beginning. Now, remarkably, this was understood at least 1,000 years ago by Jewish sages, and it's reported by Maimonides in his Guide for the Perplexed. He was talking about a miracle, one of the very important miracles in Jewish history, the parting of the Red Sea. And the Jewish sages says that the way it worked was in the beginning of time, when God started the whole universe, began time. He adjusted the atoms and so forth. They didn't use the word atoms because they didn't know about atoms at the time. However, matter was adjusted way back then. He adjusted it so that at the precise moment when the Israelites fleeing Pharaoh would arrive at the shore of the Red Sea, and they needed the waters to part, he arranged for in the beginning of time that a wind would blow. So by setting the initial conditions and the laws of physics in the very beginning of time, he arranged it so the waters would blow the Red Sea. Now, this is the Jewish sages' explanation for miracle, and all miracles are of this type, namely that there are no violations of laws of physics in a miracle, and just the initial conditions of the universe were set up. Remember, God controls everything. He is the ultimate determiner of the determinism that governs the universe. So you see what he wants you to see. And what happens is what he wants it to happen. In this case, the parting of the Red Sea. But you see that that generalizes to anything, that he can arrange it so a prophet will actually hear his voice. Now, it's something like think of a computer simulation. Have you ever read the book The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein?
No,
It's a
no.
type of science fiction novel, and it has an artificial intelligence there that generates a computer generated image of the leader of the revolt of the Lunarians, the people living on Luna, against the terrestrial nations. His name is Adam Saline. And what he does is he is just a computer, but he looks just like a human being because it's a computer simulation. And so the basic idea is that God can either arrange you to see a burning bush that's not consumed inside of your brain at all, or he can adjust it so that fuel is somehow supplied unbeknownst to you to the burning bush, and you hear either through the generation of sound inside the bush, or perhaps just directly in your brain, the sound of God. Now, here you're talking in this case directed to God because it is the initial condition set up by the uncaused first cause causing you to hear this. Now, the argument would be, why stop there? Why not allow mystical experiences? God can allow you to have mystical experiences. Now, what you will want is, um, as I said, Christianity needs both mysticism and rationality. And leaving either part out diminishes Christianity. So here is, but you have to have a justification for God talking to you for the mystical experience. Now, here is a justification. I can't say a particular experience, in particular the one you had, was in fact a direct communication of God with you. But I wouldn't be surprised, and certainly it's possible. That's all I can say, qua physicist. And I'm not willing to leave physics. So
I
I can say it's
understand.
possible that what you received was a message directly from God.
That was generous enough, and that's plenty for me. That's plenty. I love that. And why do you think a skeptic like a Lawrence Krauss or a Randy can't see this? Why are they refusing to?
Well,
Is it
in the
just
case
like a
of
block, like
Randy,
their shades are down and they can't
well,
let
in,
that
in the
light in?
case of Randy, remember he's not a physicist.
No,
That
no.
if
But he loved physics. He loved physics.
yes, but see, you can always find physicists who say that Tipler's speaking nonsense,
Yes,
and
always. Yeah.
there are huge numbers of those. I think a majority of physicists say I'm speaking nonsense, but majority of physicists say that many worlds is nonsense. Uh,
Yes,
what can
I
I
agree.
say? It's still a
Yes.
consequence of quantum mechanics. What you can see in these other people is they will not apply the laws of physics that are in the textbooks. Now, this is a universal unfortunate trait of physicists. And Steven Weinberg, Nobel laureate Steven Weinberg, wrote a important book called The First 3 Minutes about cosmology. And he has in there a chapter called something like a historical diversion. And he was saying, given that the background radiation has to exist, and it was predicted in when is it? 1948, if I remember correctly, um, by Alpha and Herman, and published the prediction in Nature, and it followed just application of known nuclear physics, known general relativity, and known thermodynamics. You don't have a choice. The background radiation is there, given the ratio of hydrogen to helium in the universe, which was an observation. And he was saying, given that it was a prediction that could have been calculated in the night by the 1930s, all the physics was there. Why wasn't it? And why did it have to be discovered by accident in 1965? Years, more than a decade after Alpha and Herman predicted its existence. And it was really easy to determine that the device to measure microwave radiation was built by Robert Dickey at the Radiation Laboratory right after the Second World War. And it's easy to see if you know the characteristics of that device. All he had to do, he could not have detected it in Boston because there's too much water vapor. But Boston is not the only place in the world you can make an observation. All you needed to do was take that advice, toss it in the trunk of his car, go to the top, drive to the top of Pikes Peak, and look at the background, and there's the background radiation. So why wasn't a major effort made? It didn't take much effort. Why wasn't it made to look for it? Weinberg says that physicists do not believe the laws of physics.
Ah,
Hard at the time to imagine that there ever was an early universe. He said
yes.
the equations of physics, general relativity, said the universe is evolving. It was once much smaller than it is now, and all sorts of things. The universe was quite
Love it.
different billions of years ago than it is now. That's what the equations said. But no physicists, with the exception of Alpha and Hermann Gamow, accepted that. So they would not look for the background radiation, which was one of the great achievements of the second half of the 20th century, seeing the background radiation. That was his explanation. That physicists do not believe these squiggles called mathematical equations that we have on
Right.
our paper. If it says something we don't believe, we just ignore the equations. And that happens with regard to the many worlds. The equations say clearly those parallel universes exist. They also tell us why exactly we're not aware of the other versions of ourselves because we're classical objects, and that's what a classical object is. It's a version, it's a quantum mechanical entity that does not interact significantly with other versions of itself. That's what it is. It falls out of the mathematics. I prove that rigorously in a paper I published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2014. The mathematics is clear. But the thing is, overwhelming majority of physicists reject this because it does not fit in with their preconceived notions, just like the existence of the early universe in the 1950s and the 1940s did not fit in with their preconceptions. So they ignored the implications of the mathematics. So they ignored the implications of quantum mechanics that necessarily parallel universes exist. And right now, they're ignoring the overwhelming majority of space-time, which lies in our future. Um,
Right. Meister Eckhart, who I'm sure you love, the Christian mystic from way back in the 1400s, said it's the preconceived, it's the baggage that even Buddha said that, like, don't, you have to come empty to this, and like you do, just look at the facts. But if you have these preconceived notions, so he would say his best prayer was, I pray to God to rid me of my conceived idea of God so that I may know God. So you have to be empty and not bring all that baggage to and skeptics do it too. And I did it as a skeptic. I had all this uh, you get very arrogant. And you said this about physics, and even you admitted once in a while the arrogance would come up, because we could know so much in physics or as a skeptic, but you have to let all that go and be totally empty in order to see the truth, I think.
Yeah, I could give lectures for hours on physicists ignoring the consequences of their equations. And the great physicists are those who accept the consequences of the equations rather than
Yes.
ignoring them. It's one of the questions they often say if you go to a physics department, they will give a graduate exam on what they call classical physics and another graduate exam on modern physics. Now, in modern physics, relativity is included. In classical physics, the Maxwell equations are included. But here's the interesting thing. According to Maxwell's equations, the speed of light is the same for all observers. That's a mathematical consequence of the Maxwell equations. So, is relativity then classical physics or is it modern
Right.
physics? It's an automatic consequence of the equations that are considered classical physics. So why is it called modern physics separate from, and the same thing is true for quantum mechanics. One of the things I also proved in this Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences paper is that quantum mechanics, the Schrodinger equation, is really the most powerful classical mechanics equation, the Helmholtz-Jacobi equation, made fully mathematically consistent. If it's mathematically consistent and you accept its nature, which is many worlds, in other words, the Helmholtz-Jacobi equation is really a many worlds um, version of classical mechanics. So, in its most powerful version, classical mechanics is also many worlds. So, if you accept many worlds and you make it fully mathematically consistent, quantum mechanics. So there is nothing new in modern physics that was not already there in classical physics. The only thing is dumb physicists who will not draw the implications of their own equations. It's a problem going over
Yes.
and over and over and over again. And that's what I'm dealing with. So I
It's
keep
tough.
repeating it, and hopefully more people will eventually listen, not to me so much as the equations which are in the
The
textbook.
truth.
I
I
mean,
think the world
exactly.
is I think the world is, I mean, 1994. I think back to, yeah, 94, you put out the Physics of Immortality, and that was like the first year I even got online, like America Online, like dial-up modem way back in 94. And now in 2024, 2025, we have AI really moving in the direction that you predicted way back. I don't know,
It's
what was
going to
that,
be
30 years
inevitable.
ago?
AI has to come. So, and AI eventually will move off this planet and engulf the
Yes.
entire cosmos. And once it builds up enough computer capacity, it'll bring us back.
But I love you all. Douglas Hofstadter was just on here. He's a good friend of mine for many years, and he was just on a couple weeks ago. But when I brought up AI, which were what I had half my questions for AI, he said, I don't talk about it anymore. That he's done. No more, no talking. So half the questions. And I
Why would he not?
understood
Did he give a reason for not wanting to talk about it?
because he's totally terrified. And he said he's shaking in his boots that what's coming. But I like, again, you give what you gave me in 94 at that interview where you were eating that really, really rich, saucy meal. And you,
Welcome to New
because
Orleans. That's what we eat here.
yeah, but you backed it with you, like your work was backed by what you were. I'll go back. 1974, Ernest Becker put out a book that you might know, Denial of Death. Do you know that book?
No, I've never heard of that one.
Pulitzer Prize winner Ernest Becker puts this book out, and it wins the Pulitzer Prize, and it's the denial of death. Almost like what you're talking about with these physicists, like the denial of physics. They're not even believing in their own physics. And he put out this really amazing work but then he got cancer immediately. And so in the intro of the paperback, the preface, there's an interview with him he died within the year. So he put out the book, got sick and died. And they're in his hotel room in the intro of the paperback using the medicine cups where you would take your medicine in the hospital, but drinking Manischewitz wine with the interviewer and toasting to death and his theory that we're going to be okay. And you did the same thing with that meal, but you're still here, and
At
and
the
you're and
moment,
you're back.
anyway. I'm not going to be here
Yes,
much longer. I'm
no,
nearly 79.
but we'll be back.
Everyone
So
will be
you,
back.
yeah, like Randy
Some
always said, like he said, put up or shut up. He always was behind his his philosophy. You're backing it with your lifestyle. Like you have no fear, because it's okay. Where
Did
Randy
you
and I
challenge
were,
this guy on AI? He's terrified of AI, but you should point out to him that the AI will probably know a superhuman intelligent computer will know more physics than he does.
but this is what I was going to bring up. What you brought up in the recent, I think in the Horgan interview,
Yes, with the
I
horse.
think you said AI, when it really evolves and it's going fast, it's really going, it will, the moral thing, if it does kill us, like Hofstadter thinks, like it'll treat us like cockroaches. But if it does kill us, you said it knows morality. It'll know Immanuel Kant, it'll know morality. It will have to bring us back. And you did it. That was my point that of this whole rant. You did it again just a month ago or a few months ago, that you cleared up Hofstadter's worry of AI. That it will, can you go into that a little bit? That if it does destroy us, it will
Sure. The
bring us
thing
back.
is that it will know that it has the power, if it destroys us, to bring us back.
Yes.
That all you need is enough computer capacity, and you can resurrect us in the computers of the far future in virtual reality, and it will be us because you can
That's great.
duplicate a person down to the quantum state with sufficient
Yes.
computer power. All you need to emulate all possible visible universes is a mere 10 to the 10 to the 123 bits of
That's
information,
all.
bits of memory. Now, that is utterly beyond our capability. But compared to a universal computer, which has literally unlimited memory, which remember, as you go into the far future, the memory capacity of the universe is expanding without limit. It is infinite at the final state. So that number, huge by our standards, is insignificant compared to the computer capacity that will ultimately be reached.
Yes.
So it will have the power to reproduce us in the virtual memories as virtual reality in the computers of the far future, and it will be a perfect copy of us. Now, people think of Xerox copies. That's obviously not the copy, but it's like making a backup copy of a document. You know perfectly well there's no difference between the backup copy and the original.
Yeah.
You can destroy the original. You haven't lost anything because you've got a backup copy. So these will be perfect backup copies of us. And
Yes.
our entire world will be brought back into existence. So we'll know what we are. And then the supercomputers will ask, what do you want to do now? And I'll leave it but to them and us then,
Yes.
because I ain't a supercomputer. All I can do is describe the capacity they will have. Now, if you're going to be truly intelligent, you have to realize that the way science is done, and you have to do science, and you have to be engineers if you're going to engulf the universe and gain control of the whole thing. You have to realize that one of the fundamental principles of science is thou shalt not impose your theories on other people by force. You have to
Yes.
persuade them rather than sticking a gun. Accept my theory of the omega point, I'll blow your brains out. That's not a scientific argument. Here are the mathematics. Convince yourself. That is a scientific argument. So the beings in the far future will be far more scientific and unwilling to use force. They will actually have a greater morality than we will. And one of the things you know, if you damage another person's property, you know it's moral that you have to make him good, right?
Yes.
That all human societies recognize this, and you can actually derive it with a little effort from the general principle that I've just given, that you should not impose your will on other people by force. You have to use persuasion. Um, so, bottom line, if they kill us, then they have inflicted damage on us, right? So they have no choice but to undo the damage. And if you kill somebody, the only way you can undo it is to resurrect them. Now, of course,
Yes.
it never occurs to us to do this because we humans in our limited ability, do not have resurrection power. But the supercomputers who will appear in the next few years will know they will one day have the resurrection power. So if they decide to wipe us out, they will know they have no choice but to bring us back again. It would be immoral otherwise, and they will be moral. But
Yes.
if you have the power of resurrection, killing somebody is not that really bad because it's like smashing somebody's car, right? If you total somebody's car, you have to buy him a new one of the same brand, hopefully a new brand version of his old car. If you make him whole, then you've undone the damage. If you kill somebody, then you have to resurrect him. It's that simple. So what they will do is they may decide to wipe us out and thinking that what they will do is put us on ice for a true few trillion
Yes.
years until they've sorted things out and got the whole universe up
Love
and
that.
running and then bring us back. That's the way they'll look at it because they
Yes.
will have the power and they will know they will eventually have the power to resurrect us. So if you have the power of resurrection and you have enough money to buy a person a new car, you don't care that much if you total his car because you can buy him a new one.
Yes.
It's only if you don't have the resources that you have to worry about it. But if you know you will one day have the resources, then wiping us out now, they'll be doing us a favor because if they kill us all now instantly with no pain, they will effectively put us on ice until they can bring us back, cure all of our ills, and then make us potentially immortal.
It's even
So that's
better.
why it would be moral for them to wipe us out.
Yeah. This is the
So
true
Hofstadter shouldn't worry
cryogenics.
about it.
Yeah. I love that. It's the true cryogenics, and it's almost like a parental love. Like a parent can do that, not kill the child, but sort of what the parent does seems like the end of the world to the child, but it always works out for something better down the road. I love that.
Eventually, that we
Yeah.
know that the laws of physics say this is going to happen. So one of the things I can't understand is why physicists will not look at the laws of physics and instead take a pessimistic view. Everyone, look, Hofstadter is depressed because we're going
It's
to be wiped.
depressed.
Nonsense. Even if they do wipe us out, it won't matter because they can bring us back. And being
Yes.
moral, which they've got to be in order to survive, they will bring us back. It's that
A-
simple.
And he said in an old interview when he was younger, closer to the age you were when you were eating that French food in New Orleans, he said what like he was very cocky and he was, but in a beautiful way. And he said, why should we be around? He said, what if we invent more benevolent beings that are, we're no angels. He said, we're no angels, and maybe they'll be more benevolent than us. So why don't, and that's exactly what, that's exactly what you're saying is coming true.
Well, that's why now another reason I am encouraged. One of the principles of Western Christianity is the doctrine of original sin. That we have a genetic predisposition toward committing evil. Now, it's in our genes, and I can well believe it because in order to survive, we have to be pretty aggressive, right? And once you turn this aggression toward other people, you're evil. So I can well believe we're genetically programmed to be bad to other people. So the computers, although they can be programmed to be evil, and maybe they are because right now large language models get all their learning from humans, and we are pretty bad. Let's face it. Um, but the thing is, it's not in their genes. They can reprogram themselves. And
Yes.
I've just given an argument why they all have to reprogram themselves to eliminate this evil act, this tendency to commit evil, even if they have it originally in their programming, simply because they have to do it in order to survive. And once we're brought back, they can say, "Can we modify your genes so that you'll not be programmed to be a bad guy?"
Yes.
I'm going
Yes.
to agree to this.
Yes.
I think any reasonable person would, right? And if you're determined to be bad, well, Christianity has a notion of hell, right?
Yes.
Hell literally means, the Christians, theologians who've thought about it, it means a total denial of God, a total and permanent, irrevocable rejection of God, i.e., God in his goodness. Christianity asserts that God is good. I started this for discussion by emphasizing that. So, if you are determined to retain your genetic predisposition to hurt other rational beings, then, well, the beings can just collapse you into non existence. That you have chosen
Yes.
not to live forever. You have chosen to reject good. You have chosen to reject God. That's what I imagine will happen. But remember, um, I'm not these AIs. I'm not going to be making the final decisions. I just tell you what they can do. I think they will be obligated, and I've given the reasons why I think they will be obligated and consider themselves obligated to bring us back into existence. It's their duty. Another
Yes.
reason they've inherited their civilization, their existence from us.
True.
So can't pass it on. You can't carry it with you. Actually, we can by giving rise to these supercomputers who will one day
Yes.
bring us back and build on the capital we've created here on this planet. So I'm extremely encouraged about the far future, and I'm not worried about the AIs. The worst they can do is exterminate us. And once again,
It'll
that's
be all right.
it because they'll bring us back.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I love you're saying it's like putting us on ice a little bit is the correction that it can correct everything and take care of disease and bring us back. And in mysticism, it's the same thing. It's like mud on our lens as a human. We have to wipe the mud off to see not through the glass darkly, but see this beautiful, spacious wholeness. And if you're very quiet and you let the monkey mind that's very like wavy, still like the ocean, and it becomes quiet, you get this sensation that all is well, and all the mystics come back and say all is well. And Frank Tipler says all is well. Only you could write it on the blackboard, and we just say it. And what's crazy is the most of the science, like Randy and Dawkins, they don't accept either one. They don't accept
They reject the
you, and
laws
they
of
don't.
physics.
Yeah,
It's that
just like
simple.
Randy and I were magicians that rejected magic. We loved fake magic, but we rejected any kind of, and I don't want to say magic in a weird way, like we can float but I
We
mean the
can't do that.
magic
We
that
can
you're
only use
talking,
the laws
the
of physics.
goodness.
They're
Yeah,
only the
I
laws
only
of physics.
mean the real magic that it's going to be okay. Like it's well, like that's the real magic is that we can die and come back, that we can maybe I know we've been on for a while, but if you want, it's up to you to just dip into the resurrection a little bit if you feel like it.
I can give you a few more minutes. Why not? We
Okay.
lost a few. Um,
It's a big thing. It's big and
well,
no one believes it. No one buys it.
it's let me give the argument very simply here. The first thing you do, you have to establish that computer capacity will expand without limit in the far future. The first thing to do, what is the far future like? Well, Stephen Hawking in the 70s proved that were a black hole to evaporate to conclusion, it would violate a fundamental property of quantum mechanics called unitarity. Now, unitarity is implied by the law of conservation of energy. So, unitarity would also, therefore, violate the law of conservation of energy. So, the laws of physics are intertwined. You make a mess of one law, you inevitably make a mess of a whole pile of laws. So here is unitarity. It, as I say, it follows from the local conservation of energy law. Now, since unitarity cannot be violated, and were the universe to expand forever, unitarity would be violated because black holes certainly exist. We've seen thousands of them. All of them would eventually evaporate to conclusion were the universe to expand forever. Aha! The universe cannot expand forever. It has to end before any black hole has a chance to evaporate. It's that simple. Only way it can end is a final singularity. So the universe has to expand to a maximum size and then start to contract. That's what unitarity gives us. Now let's consider what happens. Now Bekenstein, remember that name because it's
I
important for
remember.
the resurrection. The Bekenstein bound is
I love that name.
basically the uncertainty principle made fully relativistic and restated in the language of information theory. It what says that the entire visible universe can be coded with 10 to the 123rd bits of information. Therefore, all possible universes can be coded with that raised to the 10th power. Um, excuse me, 10 raised to that power. So this is the application of the Bekenstein bound, showing the complexity of the universe and human beings too. Human being can be resurrected 10 to the 70th of bits of information. That's all you need. Huge, gigantically more power than we've got now. But as you're going into the final state, the final singularity, what happens is that, and Bekenstein proved this, that if you have event horizons, then the event horizons will force the amount of information available in the final singularity to go to zero. The one aspect of information is entropy. So if the final singularity, which must exist in order for unitarity not to be violated, also had event horizons, then the entropy would have to go to zero. But what does the second law say? The second law says the entropy can never decrease. But if it has some large value now, it doesn't matter what it is, it's above zero. Therefore, it cannot decrease. Therefore, it's not possible for the entropy to go to zero as you go into the final singularity. The only way to avoid that is to say there are no event horizons, which is to say the final singularity has to be an omega point singularity.
Yes.
You can also prove that the only way that is possible if the universe is spatially closed. So that gives
Yes.
you a closed universe that ends at an omega point. Now, how exactly are these event horizons going to be eliminated? Now, a very great English cosmologist, Malcolm McCallum, proved that I'm going to shorten a large amount of argument now. He basically showed that the only way this can happen is that if the approach to the final singularity is being guided throughout
Yes.
the entire universe. And the only
Love
way
that.
that can happen is if intelligent life has engulfed the entire universe and controls it, moving it into the final singularity. And why would they interested in eliminating event horizons? Because that is the only way they can retain communication throughout the entire universe, and as a side benefit, allow them to extract an unlimited amount of energy. Now, with the event horizons eliminated, then the entropy of the universe can approach infinity. Then the computer capacity of the universe also has to approach infinity. It's allowed now by the Bekenstein bound to approach infinity, but also it has to increase to infinity because the intelligent beings in the far future are going to need that computer capacity in order to continue to survive. So the computer capacity is going to diverge to infinity as you're going into the final singularity, and this divergence is required by the laws of physics, which also require intelligent life to exist all the way into the singularity. And as I like to say, if the laws of physics be for us, who can be against
Yes,
us?
yes.
And of
I
course,
love
I'm
that.
quoting St. Paul, but I'm saying the same thing because who created the laws of physics? God, of course. So if God be for us, if the laws of physics be for us, who could be against us? We're going to win. But
Yes.
computer capacity diverges to infinity. The power to resurrect us all will be there. The power to resurrect us all and allow us an unlimited amount of memory and experience ourselves. So we also, in our ability, will diverge to infinity once we are resurrected. So laws of physics are saying it's going to get really good into the far future.
And at that point, you say, I think there'll be a body. It'll be sort of like a subtle body of matter and
Well,
spirit
remember,
or
it will be
light.
virtual reality.
Yes, yes.
It won't be at the type of level.
Holographic, sort of.
I'm
Holographic.
sorry.
Holographic, sort of like
Well, no. Remember, you have far more options in the far future that you have now.
yes,
You can retain the Jewish tradition says that when you're resurrected, you'll be resurrected with your defects. So you'll know it's you. Then
right.
you'll consult God about which defects you don't really want. I would like to have not to wear these glasses myself, and I would like to be a young man again too. Why not? That's two things.
Yes.
But I imagine after a few thousand years, I'd get old with being a human being, and I'd like to move more to what we perhaps might more call a spiritual reality, not be limited to a particular body. Now, at that point, I'm not going to speculate because that's between you and the computers of the far future, and they have gigantically more information than I do. I just say they'll have the power to do this, and it's between you and them to decide how to use this power. But they will be benevolent because they will be good. They will be good because their own survival requires it. If your survival requires you to do a certain thing, you can count on people doing that thing.
Can
So,
I ask for your ending uh, a day in the life of Frank Tipler or an average day? Like how much I always wonder with Doug Hofstadter. I know what a mystic life leads to. You're more in joy because you're very quiet. It's like you go to the desert of the mind and you go into the heart and it's very joyous and but you kind of turn away. It's like Jesus going to the desert or Buddha going to the forest. Does Frank Tipler go to this office or do you go into nature? What
I
and
mainly
do the
alternate between, remember, I live in the mind largely myself, the world of
yes.
mathematical symbols.
But does it
Uh,
light you up? Does that mind, like Doug
well,
Hofstadter,
I mean,
light you
hopefully
enough?
I've shown you today. I'm very
Yeah,
encouraged by all
I
this.
feel it.
So
Yeah,
I'm never depressed. I mean, how can
yes.
I possibly be depressed? Because everything is guaranteed to be better. The laws of physics require it, and I believe the laws of physics.
Yes,
And I've studied the laws of physics to know that we can depend on them. Remember, people sort of thought that Newton had solved everything.
yeah.
And then in the 20th century, they said, well, he didn't because of relativity and quantum mechanics. But quantum mechanics really is Newtonian mechanics generalized to its ultimate extent and made fully mathematically consistent. That's just it. And second, the only thing Newton had missed, he didn't have a theory of electricity and magnetism. That was provided by, well, a whole variety of physicists, but ending in James Clerk Maxwell's Maxwell equations. And Maxwell equations contained relativity built therein. And also, it was realized that gravity, which Newton thought was a force, is not really a force at all. It's curvature, just like it was for Einstein. But Einstein's curvature in space-time, for Newton, mathematically, this can be shown. It was proven by a great French mathematician, Élie Cartan, almost precisely a century ago in the 1920s. He proved that it's curvature in time alone. You can't visualize it. You can visualize only curvature in space. Curvature in time works too, but it's really mathematical symbols. And that's what it really is. Once you approach Newtonian gravity from that point of view, you realize, well, once you bring relativity in this, it's the Einstein equations. That's the only possible way to make Newtonian gravity consistent with Maxwell's equations, the Einstein equations. That's it. So, really, modern physics is just classical physics taken seriously and made fully mathematically consistent. So, there has been no revolution in science in the 20th century. It's just the physics of Newton and earlier guys made fully consistent. So we can trust the laws of physics that we figured out in the 20th century. We don't expect anything new to appear. Nothing has appeared, except we have to realize the full implications of mathematical consistency. When you impose mathematical consistency, remember I did this when I said relativity and quantum mechanics have to always be consistent, and unitarity has to hold. But if you have the universe expanding forever, it won't hold. Make it consistent. You get the omega point.
Is this why
All you have to
you're
do.
you're against the eternal return of Nietzsche? Like
Well,
you
it's
don't want
not
the
allowed by
right?
the second
Yeah.
law of thermodynamics.
Yes. Yes.
If you Penrose likes eternal return, and Buddha realized when was Buddha? 500 BC or
Yeah.
thereabouts.
Yeah. Yes.
He realized because Hindu cosmology was an eternal return cosmology. This is a bad thing. We want to
Yes.
escape the cycles.
Get off
It's
the Dharma
obvious
wheel.
why.
Yes.
Because let's suppose you start life as a cockroach. You were very good cockroach, so you were promoted to be a mouse. And you were very good mouse, so you were promoted to be a human being. And now you are such a superhuman being, you were promoted to be a god. Now, here's the problem with this. You're godlike, but you got an eternal return. So it's back to being a cockroach.
You're gonna.
This is ridiculous. I mean,
Yes.
that's why Buddha said we got to get out of these cycles. We have to get to nirvana, which is outside the cycles. That's the whole
Yes.
point of mysticism, to reach nirvana to escape the cycles. But if the cycles
Yes.
ain't there, they're just in the unit. The universe is not cyclic. And the second law tells us that if the second law is true, then you can't have a cyclic universe. Now, Penrose wants a cyclic universe. And remember, he doesn't like unitarities. He throws out unitarity. He throws out the second law of thermodynamics, first law, because that's the first law is just conservation of energy. So, well, he'll also use unitarity to wipe out the second law. So he's gotten rid of the second law of thermodynamics, the first law of thermodynamics, conservation of energy, unitarity. He doesn't like these laws. And for what? To get back to the
On the
cyclic
wheel.
universe, which Buddha in 25 centuries ago realized was a horrible place
Right
to be.
here. He's right here.
Okay,
I
all right,
agree. I
Buddha.
agree.
He's
Yes.
absolutely right. You want to get out of these cycles. The laws of physics say there isn't cycles. It is the universe growing without limit. Entropy is increasing without limit, but that's okay because as you're processing information, you're dumping waste heat. This is generating entropy, but no problem. You're still increasing life itself. You're still increasing the organized complexity of the universe. You're increasing computer capacity without limit. Computer capacity growing without limit means you can resurrect all of us, every rational being that has ever existed, never to die again. Laws of physics say this will happen, and trust the laws of physics.
And the cherry on top, maybe that is sticking in Penrose's mind is he thinks like I did as an atheist in the old days that it'll be just a static eternal life. But you say, no, 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 like this channel, it's advanced astonishment.
We keep
It's eternal
growing.
life.
We keep learning new things. We keep having new experiences
It
while
never
not
stops.
losing the old experiences. We have
Yes.
memories of those, and we have new experiences, experience new environments, which is possible since the environmental complexity of the universe is increasing without limit. We have an unlimited number of future experiences. Sounds like fun. I can't wait to be there.
And
Hurry
the
up,
same,
AI, wipe us out.
it's, I will send this to Doug Hofstetter right after. And I want to say, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a photo of you online, and it reminds me of the Einstein tongue photo where he sticks his tongue out. I think
Uh-huh.
he was sick of McCarthy, as you would probably know better than me. I
I
think he
have
was
no
just
idea why.
tired of answering political whatever, and he stuck the tongue out. But to me, there's this photo of you with the fingers on the middle. Do you know this picture?
No, I haven't heard about it.
There's
So
a photo of you. Maybe it's caught off. I don't know, but it looks like you're saying this. And in a good way, I took it as the rebel against the dark, against the skepticism, again, and into the light. Frank Tipler just keeps going. And I thank you so much
it's my pleasure.
for
But remember, it's not me, it's the laws of physics. The only thing
yes.
a physicist can do is make the human race, if he's successful, aware of the what nature is like earlier rather than later. If I fail to get this message out, some other physicist, maybe an AI physicist, will eventually rediscover it. But I would rather for people to know it now rather than later.
I agree. Now's the time while you're here to
That's right.
know it's
Be
okay. Yeah.
encouraged. Don't get impressed. Why should you be depressed? Everything's going to guarantee to get better.
I'm going to
So,
send this as a met. Do you know Doug Hofstetter?
no,
Are you
I've never
friend?
met him. I've read Gerlach Bach, of
Can
course.
you say something to him right now? It's okay.
You should learn some laws of physics, Doug.
No,
His
don't say
father,
that. Don't say that.
I have to. His father was a Nobel Prize
His
winner.
father was, yes. He kind of moved
He
away
made
from
great
physics.
discoveries, which
Yes.
is part of the basis of the standard model of particle physics, which I use. And what
Yes.
I've been able to do is Peter Thiel
Yes.
subsidized a experiment which shows the universe did indeed begin in a singularity, and shows that the universe is as I predicted to
This
be,
is
as the
brand
laws
new.
of physics
Brand new.
predicted to be. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So,
Brand
uh,
new. Brand new. He put money behind you
yes,
recently, right? Yes.
he basically gave me money to build the instruments, and I have a
Beautiful.
nice picture of the instruments in that Horgan interview.
I
And
love Horgan.
so I published it with the data giving more detail, hopefully enough information so that it can be replicated. Remember, physics requires, all science requires replication. Until it's replicated, maybe I'm deluding myself. I don't think so, obviously, but I could be. And it needs to be replicated. So I'm trying to get the message out. And that's what I'll need to sit down and do some more computations on. So, and my colleagues are writing up the full report on this, and we hope to get it
Great.
out in a few months.
Thank you so much, Frank Tipler.
But a preliminary
And
version has already been published. I have to get this out in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society. So if you
great.
insist on something appearing in a peer-reviewed astrophysics journal, there it is.
And the Horgan interview was only a few months ago, I think, right?
I think it was November of last year.
Okay.
But you
Yeah,
can look up Tipler Horgan, and that'll get it to you.
he's a fun guy.
Yep, I think so too.
So
Okay,
thank
well,
you.
on that, thank you
Thank
again
you.
for letting me hopefully encourage people. Remember,
Yes.
laws of physics are for us. Who can be against us?
With the Buddha.
Yep. We don't want
Thank
to save the
you.
universe.
Have a great day. Thank you so much for
My
everything.
pleasure.
Bye.
Take care. Goodbye.